All right. Good afternoon, morning, evening, from wherever you're joining, everybody. Thank you for being here. We've got lots of people in the meeting already. That's great to see. Welcome to our today's webinar, Data-Driven Aircraft MRO. Where is the industry heading? Very exciting topic, very exciting guests. Up front, I would already like to announce that this will be a recorded session. So in case you have to leave earlier or you have a question that couldn't get answered, there will be a video recording available afterwards. So yeah, that's in any case there. I also like to announce that for everybody that is here today, the camera and the microphone is by default muted. However, should you have a question, then you can digitally raise your hand in the meeting here, and I will see that. And yeah, I can sort of manually allow you to turn on your camera and your microphone. And I think this is a great way to keep today's webinar also a little bit interactive. So should there be questions from your side, really please feel free to use this function. And that way, yeah, then we can keep it interactive. So again, thank you everybody for being here today. My name is Michael, by the way. I'm the marketing manager at Mainblades, and we have together with H3 organized this webinar today. And yeah, without further ado, I'd like to give our two speakers the floor today. So maybe start with you, Arun. Maybe you can give the audience a bit of who you are and what you do.
Absolutely. Well, thanks, Michael, and to the Mainblades team for inviting us to participate in this webinar today. We're pretty excited about the topic. We're quite passionate about it, so we're looking forward to the dialogue and the questions. Very briefly, so I'm the co-founder and CEO of H3, and what is H3? It's a company that makes application-specific 3D surface inspection tools that are really designed to create digitalized data from the ground up, and that's a really important aspect of this whole theme of the industry's focus on digital platforms, and we'll touch on that a little bit today. And that, in a nutshell, is us.
Thank you. Patrick, would you also give the audience a bit of who you are and a bit of introduction?
Yes, Mike, thank you very much. Welcome, everybody. Great to see everybody also joining this webinar. I see already people coming in, if it's from SR Technics, from Singapore, all places of the world, also from the US. Arun, also thank you for joining us also. My name is Patrick Morcus. More than 25 years in the aviation industry. My background is aircraft maintenance, and always busy in my career, busy with improving processes in aircraft maintenance organizations. And from that point of view, always busy with helping organizations to digitize. That's also why my interest is in this topic. I joined Rotable more than a year ago because my belief is that the aviation is changing. We have, well, it's also a topic will be addressed later on. We have a shortage of engineers, so we need improvement, innovations to get things out there. Mainblades, what do we do? For those who are not familiar with us, we are inspecting aircraft with drones, fully automated, and basically making the hassle of aircraft inspections, visual inspections with cherry pickers a lot easier with a robotized system, which can be used on every aircraft type, indoor and outdoor.
Thank you very much. And I think, yeah, it's spot on. The whole topic of MRO is today's topic, digitalization, automation, making things more efficient. And on that sense, it's actually very interesting to see how really the industry has been, yeah, almost sort of facing a tsunami of data in the last decade. It has been fundamental impact on the way flight operations are organized, technical operations, but also customer engagement. So what we've seen is that while the customer side of aviation has already utilized a lot of data, but today we want to look a bit more at the operational part, the MRO side of things. And here we've actually seen a bit more of a conservative standpoint of view and a bit more of a gradual change. Although data actually has lots of promises, enhanced asset utilization, more customer engagement, lower operational costs. However, despite all of these promising things, it seems that airlines neither own nor control the whole entire digital thread that is really necessary to exploit all the insights that are potentially available. And there's numerous players, and I think it's very interesting to hear from you guys who are actually developing such digital and automated tools to see a little bit where we're standing in terms of in terms of digital tools and platforms.
Sure, Patrick, go ahead.
Okay. Thank you. It's interesting to see if I was looking back also in my aviation history, and I think already 20 years ago, I was already noticing for example, the digitalization in engine trend monitoring. So I see already that, for example, Rolls-Royce in that time already had tools for MROs and airlines to monitor that, so upload their data and basically also predict the maintenance on engines. And what you now see, it's clearly also visible in the sheet, is that I think the last 10, 20 years, you see that now finally also I think the whole component, aircraft and digitalization and MRO processes and getting it more into each other is picked up by the numbers of players. And we see them often, the large MROs or the larger airlines taking the first steps together with OEMs in the different areas. And then OEMs, they're Boeing and Airbus, but also Honeywell or other players, or also on the IFE systems. Panasonic is also doing there some steps. So there are steps are made.
Yeah. So Patrick, maybe building on what you said, from our standpoint at Atri, so maybe just a little bit of context. The tools we make are, as we said, application specific, and we've been in the aviation industry catering to it now for almost a decade. And what we've seen is that there's this mad race to build digital platforms by the larger players. And that's a great thing long-term for the industry. But today it feels like these platforms are being built on a shaky, almost sandy foundation. And let me elaborate by what I mean by that. A digital platform is only as good as the data that you make available on it. And that sort of goes back to our DNA at Atri, is we are about digitalizing the data acquisition and the data analysis from the ground up, from the source, as opposed to what currently seems to be the race in the industry on these digital platforms is scanning a bunch of paper records and then saying, hey, we've scanned all of these files, we now have a digital platform. That the decision making is going to be only as good as the data. That's the bottom line. And so from our standpoint, what we believe needs to be done is that all tools, all mechanisms, all processes need to be digitized from the ground up so that the data being produced is immediately actionable and then can be used for reliable, consistent, accurate decision making.
So we've seen that when it comes to really digital tools, and it's not only applicable to aviation, it's mostly to any sort of industry, that it comes in a curve, as we see here on the slide. And that probably before COVID, we've been really entering the expand phase. What is your guys' view on COVID? How has this changed airlines and MROs' perspectives on using new tools, on actually investing and spending money on new tools? How do you think has that perception changed because of COVID?
So from my point of view is that I think COVID really did not make really an impact on this, on the strategy. Maybe some parties are maybe using it as an excuse again to postpone this process. But my view on this is basically that a lot of MROs and also airline MROs related and technical departments are lacking the proactiveness to really innovate and to think forward. So the only thing what you see in general is that they are open for a partnership, share maybe some data, but then also, Arun, you're completely right, sharing data, which is often not useful really for bringing you forward, and making available, let's say, certain assets. But if we're talking about real investments in money capitalization, then I don't see pre-COVID, post-COVID, at this moment, a change in the behavior. They are not investing themselves. So they're always looking to OEMs to take the lead and do the investments, or find startups taking the financial risk in the process. So, yeah.
Do you agree with that, Arun? Or what is your view on this?
So at a high level, I would concur with Patrick, but let me just maybe add our Atree's nuance into what we've been seeing in the industry. So it's a bifurcated approach. So COVID, no doubt, has been it's been terrible on many levels, on a humanitarian level, on an industry level. It's been a shock, right? But I think it now depends on who you're talking to and at what level of the organization you're talking to within the aviation sector. And this is where the second level of bifurcation happens. There are the people who are looking short term in terms of how do we tighten our belts and remain fiscally viable. And for them, any additional investment is going to be delayed, right? But then you look at the executives that are looking at the long-term vision of their companies and how they want to remain competitive post-COVID, and maybe even be in a better position to compete when the next pandemic happens and to survive. They are looking at it almost in a polar opposite point of view, which is how do we implement technologies? How do we implement processes that make us more resilient during these kind of times? And so from that standpoint, the discussion around digitalization of the whole process, not just building a platform, but how do we acquire digital data? How do we implement intelligent digital tools? It's very much a topic of conversation. So long term, we believe there's COVID will help, or the experience that we've lived through with COVID will help the industry be better prepared for the next such disruption. But I also have to add to what Patrick said. It's the innovation departments, the senior executives, they're the ones who are looking at it. But if you're talking about the financial departments, they're tasked with a very specific focus, which is remaining viable today, right? So their view is going to be belt tightening and delaying expenses. Does this make sense, Patrick, in what you've seen?
I was just, I don't know what your experience is, but to get from the financial departments the funds to have for innovation projects, I have always the idea that MRO is still not having the right attention within certain organizations. And maybe you're right, it's maybe certain level, but it's, I think, still, it's all about passengers, it's all about operations, but maintenance is still, I think, behind for a long period.
In general, I'd agree, but let's take the MRO market, right? It's a monolith, but we can't really view it that way. I think there are larger, sort of more leading future-facing players, and then there are others that wait for that bellwether to move, and then they take a decision accordingly. So if we just look at what's out in the public media today, right, over the last 12, 18, 24 months, larger players like AAR, for instance, have very publicly made it their position that they're striving to become a digital paperless MRO, right? So I think again, and if you look at that vision is being led from their executive level. So I think making sure that the awareness building is happening from, if you look at people who feed, or organizations that feed into that story, companies like yours or ours, it's really about making sure we're talking to different levels, all levels of the organization, of the industry, to help them realize that vision long term.
On that note, Arun, obviously different departments will always have different objectives. So I was actually reading on a different article the other day where they were sort of pointing at, is there maybe a mismatch? On the one hand, the industry has a lot of new tools and a lot of new platforms that are being talked about. And on the other side are the actual business objectives. And that article was making the point that actually all these new tools, all these new platforms, they're taking away so much attention that we actually focus on which solutions are now should be on top of our agenda. And then airlines and MROs getting really caught up in a sort of cycle of constantly analyzing and prioritizing new tools and actually forgetting about the actual business objectives. Is that something that you also see, that there's so much excitement about these tools, but at the end of the day, it really comes down to really working on what is really important?
Yeah, that's a good question, Michael. So simply put, Atree's philosophy is quite simple, right? We and our customers know this. We are trying to make them more efficient. We're trying to have them produce better quality information. But the last thing we want to do is mess around with their processes. They've got a lot going on. So everything we build, everything we provide, everything that our customers use that comes from us is designed to be a drop-in replacement into their existing processes. And if you look at all of the buzz, the energy around always looking at new solutions, the problem where, in our view, where it leads to analysis paralysis, almost, Michael, the situation you've outlined, is when those new offerings are trying to tell the industry, forget about how you've done your business for the last 50, 60 years. We're going to define a whole new process. For us, that approach is it's sort of dead on arrival, because you're talking about trying to change the tires on a car that's moving down the highway at 70 miles per hour, and saying, let's change all 4 tires together and keep this thing running. It's not feasible. So what you want to do is piecemeal address their pain points, make their pain points go away, make them produce better quality information than what they had before, without disrupting what happens before and what happens after that change of tool that you've inserted. Does this analogy, I realize I've inserted a few of them in this explanation, but does that make sense?
I think so. Patrick, what
yeah,
is your...
I recognize this with Mainblades. What we see also in the landscape of drone solutions, we see that a lot of companies are focusing on the hardware, so on the drone itself and building drone solutions. And we as a company have always been focusing on, okay, how can we just use a standard drone, send a solution, and we have been focusing always on the software side. So making sure that an engineer can use it very easy, and the output of the process that it's repetitively the same quality, so that you can easily export it and use it to make proper analysis. So going back to what you said, Arun, earlier also, so we are together, we are really on the hands-on process of an aircraft engineer, and we are making the tools so with Mainblades so repetitively that if you do the job multiple times, you will have multiple times the same result. And that will be improving the quality of data significantly. And that will help you as an industry also to improve and make reliability analysis or learn from it and these kind of things. So absolutely agree. And also, we are also producing the data in such a way, also in the cloud, accessible immediately to link up to existing ERP systems, because we see also that there are also a lot of our customers always asking, can you link up with system X, Y, Z? And that's where you need to have the quality of data organized in a proper way. So fully agree. So yeah, it's also already, I think, mentioning here on the slide, Mike, data standards.
Yeah, absolutely. You already made a really good transition to our next slide here, indeed. So because we have so many companies developing new tools and platforms, yeah, there might be a bit of an overload. And at the end of the day, we have a very interesting quote from David Lingrich here, saying collaborating with data will bring more mutual benefits for airlines and MROs, right? We talked about this, but no airline really wants to have so many different 50 applications to look at its one aircraft. And ideally, they like to use 1 or 2. And I think, yeah, you're spot on there. Then we're talking about streamlining data inputs and Arun, what is your input in there? Do you see challenges with customers that say, yeah, but we're working with this system? Can we work together with this or that? How is that for you guys?
Yeah, so Michael, I'll maybe paraphrase your question there a little bit. We don't view it as a challenge when a customer asks us that. We view that really as a learning opportunity for how to make our offerings better and more suitable for the industry. And let me give you some context as to what I'm talking about. So again, we make these precision 3D inspection tools. So for instance, in aviation, it's for damage mapping. It abstracts all the complexity of a traditional 3D system. It works with one button. So any skill level in the hangar, in the structural engineering department, anywhere, they hold it up to the aircraft like a camera, they push a button, it gives them reliable, consistent, repeatable, SRM compliant answers, not data that needs post-processing. Now, we, of course, in this journey over the last almost decade, we think that's amazing, right? And our customers think it's amazing, and the OEMs and certifying authorities think so too, and they've certified it. But we always like to inject a ton of humility in terms of what we do. And very humbly, we feel we're really a small speck in the overall aviation industry landscape. Our value proposition is important, but it's a small piece. And so when a customer or the industry comes to us and says, hey, I've got these other systems, how are we going to can you make your thing work with us? For us, that's not a customer problem, that's a us problem. Right. Because when we are a piece of a much larger puzzle, it is incumbent on us, Atree, to make sure that everything we do is interoperable as much as possible with everything else out there that our customers are using. So maybe to converge this thought a bit, when we first created our system for damage mapping, DentCheck, we created it, we designed it, took it on trials and pilot runs. This is almost about 7-8 years ago. We designed it based on very direct industry feedback. Every MRO airline that we spoke to told us what feature they wanted. And we essentially designed it to the spec of the industry to do just that one problem for them. And then we embarked on the journey of certifications, and that finished only a few years ago. So realistically, we've been officially certified and selling, and our customers have been buying our tools only for the last 3 years. And we designed it for their original statement of handheld use, okay? They wanted to have an operator go up to the aircraft, hold the tool up at a damage spot, get an answer. Fast forward 3 years, we now have over 100 tools deployed in the industry amongst more than 36 MROs and airlines and OEMs globally, and they're using it every day. Aircraft damage is being dispositioned based on the reports created from our tool. However, alongside that, in parallel over the last 4 years, 4 or 5 years, we noticed that, hey, the industry today is asking us for a handheld tool, but we see trends happening where there will be a different vehicle to carry the tool. Today, the vehicle is a human being. Tomorrow, it could be a robotic automation cell. It could be a drone. And that's what got us started. And this is also where our earliest interactions with Mainblades began several years ago, is keeping ahead of where the industry is today, but where their eyes are set for the future, and making sure that when they are ready to say that we want things to interoperate, that we at Atree are ready with other partners in the industry with a packaged solution that just works. Am I answering your question perhaps a bit long-winded, Michael?
No, absolutely. I'm curious to hear Patrick's views on this. How are we tackling this let's say, yeah, call it a challenge. Maybe some people may call it opportunity, as Arun does. How are we looking at this?
Well, at Mainblades, I think we are a lot younger company. We are now in the market about 3 years. So we today also announced our first launching customer, Lufthansa Techniek, and we are still in the process, of course, to get all those inputs. But over the last 3 years, we have been shifting a little bit in our business model, also based on input. We started with the whole idea to improve the lightning strike inspections on aircraft, which we still have as our main focus area. But we found out that that's still a relatively low volume, and to improve the data and the machine learning what we have, because we have our solution, we can also recognize damages and deviations on the airframe. We need a lot of data, and so we found out that the heavy maintenance MROs are having a much more bigger need to have continuously aircraft inputs and checking aircraft on all deviations, and that would be giving us a lot more data to improve the machine learning. So in starting from a focus on the lightning strike inspection, more airline related, we are also now seeing maybe at the first, and also that's related also to COVID, because there is less airline operations going out there. So we're focusing now on the heavy maintenance MROs, which have a need to check aircraft on deviations. Now, so there we see a shift in changes also in data requirement, because an airline would like to use the data to feed their ERP systems and the structure engineers department, while an aircraft MRO would be much more focusing on, okay, I have an aircraft here, I need to go out, I want to now immediately know, do I need to put in repairs there, or if it's maybe a redelivery of an aircraft to a lessor, then there is also a different standard to be used and different alternatives. So we have been also changing our data there. Not a challenge, but you need to move with the market. At the end of the day of the process, we are focusing on getting our data back into the ERP systems. And I think about 10 or 20 systems are, I think, dominating the market at this moment globally. And that's where we focus on, so that we are able to access those data. And depending on which customers, with which system comes first, we will be adopting our basically our data flow into the system. We see that as a need, and not as, so it's a challenge, of course, to adapt to all the different systems, but it's a need to get to the next level of development. Because this,
yeah, Patrick, question for you based on what you just said. I'm curious. So, the data that you're generating and the industry you're a part of and the innovation your company is driving is all still quite new for the whole ecosystem, right? So I'm curious, what kind of, since we're on the topic and Michael brought up the topic of challenges, what kind of challenges are you witnessing in terms of regulatory acceptance of the data being produced by companies like yours?
It's interesting. Well, I think at this moment, I think the biggest regulatory challenges for us is more that we have a large customer demand to fly outdoor with our drones. So our drone is capable to fly outdoors, and I think everybody knows what an aircraft hangar is costing per shift. So everybody would like to use our tool to save a lot of hangar costs outdoor. And there you see the interesting thing that technology, drones are already out there for years, capable to fly outdoor. And we also created also our camera and all the hardware on the drone to fly outdoor. Up to 6x4 we are able to fly outdoor. Only we now notice that airports, aviation regulatory were not prepared that the development would go so fast. But glad to the, let's say, the initiatives of Amazon, UPS, FedEx, with all the parcel providers, that they also want to start to move drones and packages. We see that everybody understands, and also EASA now changed also the regulations to make it possible to fly on CTAR areas, so restricted areas around airports. So it's a matter of time. Looking now to the data, today our approach is that we are fitting in the current flow, and that we are a supporting tool for aircraft engineers to much faster find the right spots to make a final assessment. And if we have sufficiently gathered data, so that we also can, let's say, have enough statistics to really say validate with an let's say certain significance, then we will be moving over to the more regulatory side and say, okay, it's now proven, and now you can see this as a replacement of the human assessment. But that's that's not where we are now. That's, I think, if you look to the future, that's our main direction for development. Is hardware is now right. We have the pipeline with software and data is also now right. It's now more about, okay, collecting the data to validate so that it can be something approved in the 145 or an FAA or a maintenance organization.
So your point is basically proving equivalence to GVI or general visual inspection. Is that right?
Correct. And well, and especially on the assessment side.
Okay. So have again, I'm curious, and maybe this is not a bridge that your industry sector has yet crossed, but once that data starts being produced, who's going to lay claim to it, right? Because we produce data, you produce data, everyone's producing data. Have you encountered any?
I think you are not surprised that at this moment the aircraft owners are claiming the data, and that's interesting because it's up till now it's not the lessors claiming it, because I think technically they are owning the aircraft, but it's the airline operators are claiming the data. And now sharing data or learning from it and interaction between different customers to basically improve data analysis. So that's something I think the next challenge it will be if we have multiple customers using our solution. But then this may be a question for you, Arun, because you are also having, I think, you also need multiple data sets, I think also, or maybe during your development from multiple customers, and maybe even also using it for your own development. And how did that work? Did they allow you to share it with others, or?
So if I understand your question correctly, we don't require any proprietary aircraft information in order to develop our tools. So one of the unique things about all of our portfolio of tools is we don't require any CAD models or graphs of the actual structure. We perform real-time 3D inspection on the true surface, not a blueprint at the time of manufacturing, but on the true surface in its current state today, based on localized inspection of that area. And so that's where a lot of our IP and know-how exists, and the results that are then created with sort of projected augmented reality within about 2 seconds from the time an operator clicks the button. How do you know that what you're seeing from our tool is correct or not? Especially since we're not tying it to any aircraft CAD data. The simple approach is don't believe us, right? Don't believe anything we publish in our brochures and specs, but believe what you can validate based on a national lab traceable validation reference standard. And that's what our OEM partners in the industry, Airbus, Boeing, the now existing groups of Bombardier and Embraer, that's what they all actually really appreciate about our approach, which is that we're not saying believe our accuracy and resolution because we have it printed on a piece of paper, but rather because we can prove it to you on a reference standard that is traceable to national labs. That's the process. But just to repeat my answer to your initial question, when we built our tools, all we needed to know is the details of the problem and the pain points that our customers, the industry, was suffering. We didn't need them to tell us anything else that would be considered proprietary data or IP about the aircraft itself. Does that am I answering your question, Patrick?
Yes.
Okay.
Thanks.
Before we move on to a great example of a success story, actually, on how to bring together all the different players in the industry and maybe work towards that one platform, I want to emphasize again to the audience, also to those that maybe joined a bit later, you have the option to raise your hand digitally here in Microsoft Teams. So should there be a question, should you really disagree with something that our speakers are saying here, or you have a completely different view or some very interesting insight, please raise your hand digitally, and I will be able to allow your camera and your microphone, and that way you can become part of the discussion. So yeah, I really encourage you guys also to make use of this feature and really yeah, get to ask your question if you have any.
Controversial topics are good for such discussion, aren't they, Michael?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay.
You said something very interesting. I think that you were talking about operators, lessors, airports, OEMs, MRO providers, each holding really a part of the puzzle. And I think you nailed it by saying that it is indeed a puzzle, and everybody holds a piece of it. We've seen Airbus actually launching Skywise. Do you guys see, will this be something like this be the future of bringing all these digital tools together? And what are your standpoints on this?
I'll defer first to Patrick.
Well, I think at the end, the OEM is playing, and especially aircraft OEMs are playing an important role to streamline this data process, because they are often starting with the build of an aircraft already. The development already starts now for the next aircraft to be launched, let's say maybe 10 or 20 years, and they're all busy with structuring the data and how it's done. So my idea is it all starts with an aircraft produced by an OEM. The aircraft are more and more generating data. And I think one of the big challenges for the industry have been up till now is dealing with that data stream already up till now. So I think the latest aircraft, A350, 787, everybody have seen all the nice presentations of both OEMs producing gigabytes, terabytes of data on an annual basis. But what I recognize is that everybody is struggling to process the data, like what Arun also mentioned before. So generating data is not the issue often. It's more about making the data into information. So having the right data and also the tools to do so. And I think what everybody was also mentioned in the previous slide, numbers of suppliers have been producing their own tools, and that's exactly what was already mentioned. And I think now you see that there are initiatives coming out, if it's Skywise, but you have also Aviatar of Lufthansa taking care of it. But it's basically putting the data together. And I think selecting tools, because if I'm looking to Skywise, it looks like that it's selecting tools for partners and bring the data and structure it in such a way that those tools are also immediately adding value to their operation. So I think it's the direction we'll be heading to. So and probably because my idea is that OEMs are still not always having the right operational knowledge, because they are at the end of the day still a producer of aircraft and not an airline or an MRO, and so they need the partners in the aviation industry to get this working. So providing the tools, and I think with Skywise checking it out, that's happening.
Would you agree, Arun? Do you have a different point of view on this?
No, I actually would like to build on what Patrick has said, but I'd like to start off with sort of two key reminders, right? First is that at H3, because we view ourselves as part of this global aviation puzzle, right? I want to emphasize what I said earlier. One of our key design criteria whenever we're designing a new tool is ensuring interoperability. And that, so far, I've only mentioned interoperability with respect to the different kinds of vehicles, if you will, the human being, the drone, the robot. Patrick mentioned interoperability on another level, which applies very directly to our tools as well, which is interfacing to ERP systems. Or if you take an ERP system, which is really, again, a massive offering, there are specific aspects of an ERP system that pertain directly to us. So the damage tracking aspect of the ERP, right? So they have a wireframe of an aircraft, and it's traditionally they have paper handwritten records, and they say, it's here's a red dot on that wireframe where we have this paper record for. We, based on our from the ground up digital approach, we're trying to make sure that we we can add value to those traditional wireframes. And so in those dent tracking, damage tracking systems, now when someone clicks on one of those red dots, if the underlying damage has been acquired with our tool, then it will open up the digital result and report, OEM approved report of that damage. So it becomes a more seamless digital process where, again, it's digitalized from the ground up. And so for us, maintaining that interoperability with those ERP systems is also very important, and we've now showcased that in a few cases over the last few years with some early damage tracking systems out there. That was my first reminder. The second one is this, and it's very important if you think back to that last circular Skywise slide that you had. We are not the OEM. We are but a small player. And so it's in our best interest, and we feel in the industry's best interest, that our tools play in every such offering, whether it's Skywise or Aviator or anyone else's. But because we're not the OEM, and I want to be very clear, I'm not speaking on behalf of any of the OEMs, but when you talk about digital data ownership, there's no doubt the OEMs have a tremendous amount of weight in that discussion, right? Because they make what then becomes the whole source of this discussion for the next 50, 60 years of that asset's life. But we also feel that, and I think most of you will agree, it's still very early days. There's a lot of discussion going on about data ownership, but our humble view is that one entity alone doesn't necessarily have to own all the data, because if you think about the stakeholders involved, Boeing, Airbus, Bombardier, Embraer make the aircraft, right? Airlines buy it, sometimes directly, sometimes through leasing companies. The MRO services it. The MROs use tools made by companies like yours and ours that produce very valuable, actionable information, or quote unquote data. There's data being produced at every basically the message is there's data being produced at every step of this chain of events. There's probably room for a broader discussion than simply, saying that the first one to come to the table with a comprehensive digital platform that might be built on sand is the owner of the data, right? That's our perspective.
Very interesting, thank you. I see that we actually have someone that raised his hand. I see Tom Broughton. I enabled your camera and your microphone, so you just have to unmute yourself, and the floor is yours. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you, Michael, and thanks, Aaron and Patrick, for the discussion so far. The question I have kind of relates to data ownership and relates to the links to the number of stakeholders who may have access or claim to the data on an engine or aircraft. So the question is kind of, with data becoming, perhaps a revenue generator, what do you see as the implications of that for data ownership? And do you see stakeholders maybe becoming more aggressive with their data ownership strategies? Thank you.
Thank you. Is this question addressed to someone specific, Arun or Patrick, or to both of them?
Yeah, both of them. Thank you.
Cool, thanks.
Maybe Tom, thank you for the question. Maybe to make sure that we answer it in the appropriate context, would you mind just sharing a little bit about your background, which side of the industry, which node in this value chain that we've described you're generally connected with?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm with Aviation Week Network, the events team. And yeah, I mean, my specific interest is in relation to engines, but any kind of insight you may have on ownership and kind of data as a revenue generator would be really interesting.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe I would like to react on this. Everybody's often too afraid to share the data for this, and then giving this as the argument that somebody's maybe going to make money with this and so on. The aviation industry, to my idea, is still a relatively small community. It's a so if you're talking to the number of airlines which are at the end owning the aircraft and also the data, well, at least having a lot of data. Often OEMs try to make money with the data, but also earlier also mentioned to myself, they're also putting the first steps and also putting the financials on the table to innovate and to get this whole process working out. And they need data to continue. What I think what the industry is still, which is a big opportunity for the industry, is to cooperate on, for example, airline level much more than it's happening today, and not leaving the whole initiative with the OEMs. If the industry is forgetting all the commercial competition, which is still out there and fine, but I think from an MRO perspective, and if you want the digital MRO, at the end of the day, aircraft engineers are completely, well, MRO organizations are completely standardized doing their jobs. So the data generated cannot be so, how we say it, competition, risky to share whatever. Because at the end of the day, a lot of data is already shared with the OEM for predictive maintenance and other ways. So I have sometimes stated that the industry is too long hesitating to share the data with each other, to learn from it. And because also another view on this is that an average airline and even the large ones are still having a limited flow of data to really be smart and to get really to a next level digital MRO. Because at the end of the day, also globally, we find industry with, it is at around 28,000 aircraft flying around, big. But I just earlier also today had to look into the automotive, for example, the heavy load trucks. And I was surprised that every year there are 1.7 million new trucks built and all digitalized with data and so on. And then I thought, okay, that's probably a real data flow. But if I think, looking to our industry, we are relatively small. I think cooperation between airlines, sharing data, that's the way forward. And then really nobody's really getting in the position to really make money with it because it's already out there.
Very interesting.
Yeah. No, completely. By the way, if I can just reiterate Patrick's point of view, fully agreed with it. I think in this mad quest for building platforms that encompass everything, I think the larger players may be forgetting what they so often talk about, which is best practice sharing, right? And they should probably, it's probably worthwhile for them to look at smaller, more agile providers of what you might consider innovative offerings in the industry, and companies such as Mainblades, such as Atri, that are, and you know, there are dozens and scores and hundreds of others like us that have collaboration and best practice sharing as part of our DNA, because that's how we realize how all boats can float. But the moment there's a mad rush for sort of demanding sort of property rights, if you will, then I think that's where then the industry suffers.
Thank you. I have given the floor to Mohammed Asim Ali. Welcome. Thank you. You raised your hand as well.
Good evening, everybody. Actually, my question is both of them, Mr. Arun and Mr. Patrick. I am a former employee for Etihad Airways. I was in the line maintenance in the planning department. Now my question is, as Mr. Arun here, in the beginning, he told him that the digital data has come to the ground. So actually, my question is whether if that any industry or manufacturer, they are doing, instead of ATL books, we can convert it into the digitalize. So it will be a save time. It will be a very clear to the information for the engineers and the paperless work, and it should be a saving of cost and the information will be available clear to the everybody. And in which I have seen in the line, they have a holding the cabinet ATL books and the avionics. So different ATL books they are holding, and instead of the engineer has wasting their time. So my question is that if any industry has raising any device instead of the manual returning all the ATLs and any defects, anything, it should be digitalized. If any defect raised, the cabin crew should have to same time update on that. Even the avionics, anything the captain has noticed, they should have to be digitalized, raise this. In the same time, the message should go to our MCC or any fleet planner or everybody. And the same information goes through that a line engineer, a manager. So it can be a save time and the paperless. So this is my question. So if they have any suggestion for this, any digitalizing the logbooks or
Yeah, Austin, that's a great question. Thank you for asking that. And it's also a very comprehensive one. And Patrick, I hope you don't mind, I'm jumping in to sort of share a little perspective first. What you've mentioned is at the very core of what we do. So, you've heard us talking about, and I'm mentioning this to help answer your question. You've heard us talk about the inspection tool that we make, and it produces digital data, answers, actionable. But to foster that digital chain of collaboration between the MCC, the pilot, maybe even the OEM, everyone involved in dispositioning that damage, we make sure that digital data produced by our tool is in real time available on our cloud portal, which every one of our customers has secure login rights to. So, for instance, let's say hypothetically Etihad was using DentCheck and someone does a scan with the tool on the aircraft, and now they want to make sure that the other Etihad team members, maybe not at the same physical location, are able to see it and sign off on it. It all goes on to Etihad's dedicated 8Cloud portal, where they log in and they see the scan in real time. They see the report that has been generated in real time, and they accelerate their decision making. That's sort of our contribution to that digital flow. But again, I go back to my earlier statement. We are but a small piece in this much larger puzzle. There are many other manuals, books, documentation that are not in our hands to influence, but hopefully that's where the OEMs step in to help digitalize those processes too. Did I understand your question properly, Asin? And did my answer make sense?
Yeah, it's okay. It is touching to my question related to that. So,
Patrick, how do you feel?
Absolutely agree to you, and maybe to add on. So the only difference we maybe are making a little bit more compared to today's maintenance environment is that we are with our solution, with the drone solution, we will be collecting the complete aircraft, complete area. So where today we are always doing maintenance focusing on defects, finding the defects, deviations, and we will be recording all areas. So we are sharing all data in our in the iPad application, as seen also now on the slide, but also to a desktop environment. And this enables everybody to look also to other areas. So if today an aircraft engineer would be doing a lightning strike inspection and finding something, would make a picture and share it maybe to others, but it will be only that picture of that damage. And if somebody on the structures engineering department would say, well, if you have an impact on this area, then probably 2 sections further there will be another impact. Then normally they will be needing going back to the engineer, ask them to go with the cherry picker to the aircraft to check it again. And we already have been picturing the whole area of the aircraft, and it enables everybody basically to completely check the aircraft, every area, without being physically at the aircraft. So that's a little bit the difference of approach now, what's happening with us, because we think if we fly the drone, it's so fast, you can collect basically the complete aircraft, instead only focusing on those areas which you probably think there is something different.
Thank you, guys. Very interesting insights. Given looking a little bit at the time, also I see that we have one more person that raised his hand here. Naf, sorry if I pronounce this correctly. Naf Gaurav. The floor is yours. Mr. Naf Gaurav, are you still with us? I saw you raised your hand. Do we have a question from your side?
You're on mute, I think.
You have to unmute yourself still. Camera is working already. Maybe quickly check the device settings in Teams. Try without.
Michael, are you able to unmute him?
Let me see. I might. No, I can only disable his mic, so you have to do that yourself.
Okay.
Maybe try without the headphones. You still have to click the unmute button in Teams because I see it's still deactivated for you.
Yep.
No worries, all good.
Is it possible to entertain his question via chat, Michael?
Yeah, I'm sure you can use the chat as well. Yeah.
Okay.
And meanwhile, as he's typing, are there maybe, if you wanted to also sort of steer the dialogue, Michael, to the next topic of or question you had for Patrick or myself?
Yeah, so I was actually well, you guys already mentioned the tools and the iPad interfaces and the portals. Maybe you can just elaborate a little bit as to what can be really done with these tablet interfaces, with these software. How does it really add value on the maintenance floor? How can maybe for the audience that are not so familiar with the tools, just elaborate a little bit on what we're seeing here?
Sure. Patrick, would you like to begin?
Yes, let's start. So the Mainblades solution is for all of you on the right hand solution. So what we have on the iPad application. So first you fly the drone, which is automated, and the data collected, the pictures collected, will be uploaded to the cloud environment where we have machine learning, and then the output is coming back, and that's also what you see here on the picture. So here you see that our machine learning detected a deviation, so that can be some of the 13 classifications from an SRM, and he's making a suggestion. And you as an engineer or a structure engineer on the department, you can acknowledge it, and you can continue. You can also add manually to the picture, and at the end, this is also the basis to do a full reporting like a tent and buckle chart. We are able to position on stations and stringers due to the use of our own models. We can so we are very precise on millimeters, on locations, and on dimensions. And that's also what you see in the picture. So we are able to measure up the length and the width automatically, even if you afterwards are adding additional deviations, because you maybe would like to add an additional damage, which you see on the picture, and then it will be automatically recalculated. So we are using the iPad to give immediately feedback, but also the same screens are available in the desktop environment. So this means that in average, a process where normally an aircraft would be checked, let's say wide-body aircraft taking maybe 12 to 15 hours ground time with multiple engineers with cherry pickers, we are doing around, let's say, in a 3-hour flight, we do a full wide-body inspection and mapping all the surfaces, including reporting with machine learning and reporting already deviations found. So we expect that you can be saving more than 50% and having a more accurate, including high visibility of high definition pictures. That's what we do with the solution.
Thank you. Arun, do you want to?
Yeah, maybe if I can just round out the answer to that, and then you can go to the chat question that came up.
Yes.
So our 8Cloud platform is generally serves a very similar purpose to what Patrick has mentioned, but let me just explain the flow. So there are multiple stakeholders in the flow of the damage mapping where our technology plays a role. There's the person doing the damage inspection, the measurement. So the technician, mechanic, inspector, they use the physical dent check tool as you see it in the upper left quadrant. They hold it up to the aircraft, push a button, it gives an immediate answer about the damage. And it has SRM compliant numbers on it, so they know if it's in or out of limits. What we see then is our customers then told us, hey, we need to digitize the report. So several years ago, the structures engineers came to us and said, you know how you've digitized the workflow for the technicians for damage measurement? Can you digitalize our reporting? So we created this reporting environment in our 8Cloud portal, where basically the scan results from the dent check tool in real time transferred to the 8Cloud portal. The structures engineer or whoever is responsible for creating the report gets a quick alert on their phone, tablet, Surface device, desktop, whatever they're using. And then they go into that portal, log in, and immediately can take that scan file. And on average, our customers in less than 5 minutes are able to fully annotate and create a report that has an immense amount of detail, including distance of the damage from critical frame stringer boundaries, interdent distance, the general location, orientation of the damage, the gridding of a particular damage, and create a very comprehensive multi-page report that has vertical, horizontal cross sections of the damage. And those reports are then used every day to disposition aircraft, and OEMs sign off on those. And so the benefit of it is that our customers, and this is documented in a number of case studies that are out in the public forum, but on average, our customers are seeing about a 90% time savings compared to traditional approach of damage mapping and reporting. But almost more importantly than the time savings is the fact that we are now injecting orders of magnitude greater consistency, repeatability, and accuracy compared to anything they've done before for damage mapping, right? Because earlier the status quo was 3 seasoned inspectors come to a damage spot, the aircraft has to take off soon, and they're waiting on these 3 guys to make a determination. And guess what? Our customers tell us those 3 seasoned inspectors come up with 5 different answers for that single damage spot. And then there's a lot of discussion back and forth and convincing each other of what might be the right answer, and then in order to meet the deadline for a turnaround time. We take away the subjectivity from that whole workflow and make it objective, accurate, and fast. That's what that whole workflow and the cloud portal enable.
Thank you. Yeah. Getting back to the question from Nav, this is going about the regulatory authorities. I think this is a question for you, Patrick. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about the authorities and how it's all sitting with drone inspections.
Yeah. So as at this moment today, there is not a aviation regulatory approving a drone technology in such a way as we would maybe think of it. But what is the situation today is that on the A320, there is a drone inspection improved in the aircraft maintenance manual, and that's enabling Part 145 organizations to use it as let's say, an alternative tool to inspect an aircraft. That's the situation, what it is today. So how do we, and also now how we are cooperating with a number of partners, so like KLM, Corendon Airlines, but also with Lufthansa Techniek, is that we are taking 3 steps. So the first step is that we will be making sure that the drone will be added as an alternative tool in the Part 145 in the maintenance procedures, which is possible because the AMM is not dictating for visual inspection certain tools, so you can use it as an alternative tool. So that will be an internal procedure to be approved by a local authority, depending on where the MRO is located. Secondly, then we expect also with that we are going to work together with OEMs and clients to get it approved and added to the aircraft maintenance manual. And separately, we are working ourselves on getting the approval to fly the drones outdoor. As mentioned before, EASA is enabling this, and this is what we expect in Q4 to be allowed for EASA, for the European authorities to fly outdoor. And then still we are depending on the local airport authorities to fly outdoor on a local airport. But that's the situation. So people can use drones as an alternative means of tooling to assist engineers to properly make to make faster the assessment. But still, at the end of the day, aircraft engineers are making the final assessment and releasing the aircraft.
I see, Nuff, you enabled your camera again. Did you manage to get your audio working as well? Does it answer your question sufficiently? Oh, good. I see a thumbs up, so that's a good sign. Do we have any more questions from the audience? It's really your time. We're getting towards the end of today's webinar. So should there be a question for our two speakers here today, now is really the time.
Mike, I see also a question in the chat from Arun.
Oh, did I miss something?
Yeah, so not Arun, you, but it's from the audience.
You're right. I missed this one. Let me see. That's about electronically recording the defects and sort of having a centralized database solution. I think Arun was actually touching on this earlier when he was talking about the cloud. Maybe you can highlight a little bit more on how that is working. Can all this be immediately accessed by customers, and how is it organized?
Yeah. So from one Arun to the other, thank you for the question. Yeah, so the short answer is, hopefully building on what you heard me talk about a few minutes ago about our 8Cloud portal, that is something our customers are already using. So the workflow that I outlined is actually in practice today, and it's benefiting on multiple levels, because if you think about it, the person creating the report could be in a completely different geography than where you are. But in real time, they will get an alert that the scan, the damage map is ready for them to create a report with. And once they do that in a couple of minutes, as soon as they've completed the report, then all the key stakeholders, whether it's the OEM that they're submitting it to, will also get an alert. Of course, the OEM has to be included in the customer's 8Cloud portal by the customer, right, as a participant. But essentially, the communication then becomes seamless. You get rid of emails, you get rid of the subjectivity of the source data, because everything's coming from a digitalized tool that's traceable and to national standards and approved by OEMs. So then it allows for a more robust, not digital data, but a whole digital chain of processes and workflow. Arun, does this help shed some light on your question? And I'm happy to answer it offline if I haven't touched on it right now.
Yes, I was actually about to say this. We see both of our speakers' email addresses here, so I really encourage everyone that is in the meeting here today. Should you have any question, any concerns, do you disagree with any statements that were put forward here today, get in touch. Really, get in touch. These guys, they are the experts, so this is a great opportunity. I see we have another question here. I think this is something for Patrick, talking about the structural repair manuals, sort of interfacing it. And I think you can tell a little bit about the dent and buckle charts here in the station.
But I think also this is also for sure also Arun's cup of tea for this. So let's. But I will start. So what we will do is, so our long-term vision is that there will be possible with our solution that you will be seeing the damages, including all the dimensions, and also ideally, that's the perfect world, you already get an indication, okay, is this within limits or without beyond the limits of the SRM? And if you then at the end consequently also need to go back to the OEM maybe to get special repairs. That's not where we are today. So we are able to detect it, and we are also able to give the dimensions, but then still as an engineer, you need to go take the SRM, probably digital on your tablet, and compare it with the SRM to see and make the estimate and final assessment if you can continue, if the aircraft can depart, yes or no. So that's where we are today. Arun,
Yep.
you?
No, thanks, Patrick. So first of all, thank you, Vivek, for the question. So I see you're part of an organization that uses our tools already, and I appreciate that. The answer to your question is, first of all, your question is very relevant because the SRM is and this goes back to the earlier dialogue about data. The SRM is a very coveted data document that the OEMs have complete ownership of. But we have still managed to find a way to make sure that our tool comprehends the SRM limits so that our customers have the option of basically seeing an immediate red, green, go, no go answer to relative to the specs of that region of the aircraft as defined in the SRM. We don't, despite our best efforts, we've never been able to get direct access to the SRM. The OEMs don't permit that because of the confidential nature of that document. However, our customers, the airlines and MROs, do have access to the SRM, and we enable them to essentially create these barcodes, QR codes with the specific SRM limits for the particular zone, station, frame stringer, region of the aircraft of interest to them. So that when they go from one zone of the aircraft to another, they just flash the relevant QR code in front of our tool. That QR code already has comprehended the limits of the SRM in it. And then our tool is automatically configured to now give go, no go answers for that specific zone's tolerance. I hope this makes sense. We're happy to elaborate and even show a demo of it online at a later point. Just let us know, or I can have one of my colleagues based out of Southeast Asia show you how your parent organization is using it today.
Thank you very much, guys. I think we slowly reaching the end of today's webinar. I want to end today's session with a question to both of you guys. So what is your guys' outlook for the industry? What are you looking forward? What are some positive signs from the industry? And what is making you positive that the industry is picking up again this year?
Well, I think maybe you can confirm it, Arun, but I was in the US, I think 10 weeks ago. Then I saw already the aircraft already packed up with a lot of passengers, everybody flying around. And that was for me obvious. Okay, this is the signal, because we can see on LinkedIn and so on nice graphs from everybody. But if you see and be in a physical aircraft and see that it's packed with passengers, then you know that the industry is recovering. I also made flights last couple of weeks here in Europe, and there it's less. You still see that there is hesitation. The frequency of flights is not on the same level, but the direction is there. And I also dare to say, I've heard a lot of people who say that these kind of things, these webinars and so on, is the way forward. Well, still, guys, I would like still to present this, to discuss this in the roundtable together with the team of Aviation Week during a MRO Europe conference, because I still think meeting up people is still the way forward. So I think everybody will soon get back into aircraft and we will be flying out and recovering.
Thank you. Final word to Arun.
Yeah, so completely agreed with Patrick in terms of the industry. The industry is coming back. It's not a matter of if, it's just a matter of when. And I think that when will be tempered based on the geography and the local conditions. But there is definitely a pent-up demand to get back on the road and in person. But maybe just a concluding thought from my side is we've discussed a lot about the digital data, the data ownership, the digitalization of the data from the source, so that these castles that are being built that are called digital platforms by the big players in the industry, that they're actually built on a solid foundation of good source digital data. But what does all of this mean long term? And I'm sharing our perspective. So our vision is simple. Today, our tools are being used by dozens of airlines MROs to do damage mapping. But we already foresee, based on input from our customers, as over the years, as thousands of more aircraft start getting mapped with DentCheck, then it starts to create a baseline, a new, fresh digital baseline record of that aircraft's damage map. And over time, there's not only the difference of what they inspected in the last cycle or the last check versus the next one, but there's also a predictive element of it, of looking back and seeing, hey, why is it that these areas of the aircraft seem to be getting the propensity of out of limits data? What is going on in our operations that causes that? And there is a very valuable and rich set of insights that we see the industry is going to be able to garner once they adopt a digital from the source strategy.
Thank you. Very powerful. I think we can leave it at this. I once again want to thank everybody that's been part of this, both the speakers as well as the attendees, for the questions. I think we hope you learned something today. We would like to stay connected. That's very important. We don't just want to leave this and go out there and without any follow-up. So I repeat it again. Should there be questions, please really feel free to get in touch with Arun and Patrick. And this will be a series, so we will be hosting more webinars. So I really encourage you also to stay connected on LinkedIn. Keep an eye out there for future webinars. And yeah, I want to again thank you for being here, and we hope you had a good time. Thank you.
Thank you to the Mainblades team for putting this together, and to the audience for the amazing questions.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Guys, have a good one. Bye.